Welcome back guys to Most Amazing Top 10. My name is Danny Burke and today, for you, we have the top 10 craziest near-death experiences. Now just to warn you guys, this one is going to be pretty crazy. We've got some really strange stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. These are stories about people who almost died but ended up living to tell the tale. It might make you never want to leave your house again. Let's see though, as we get into our number 10, and we have Dr. Mary Neal. In 1999, Mary Neal was an American surgeon who was kayaking in Chile when her boat crashed over a waterfall and pinned her underwater against some rocks. She was completely submerged, about 10 feet underwater. As she started to drown, she had a religious experience where she was being greeted by spirits and people who gave her an enormous sense of love. She then saw her own body being pulled ashore and being given CPR. She was eventually revived. Now during all of this, she said God told her that her 9-year-old son at the time, Willie, was going to die one day, but he didn't say how. 10 years later, aged 19, he was killed in a car accident. At the number 9 spot now, we have Tracy Morgan. This famous comedian and actor had a scary near-death experience in 2014 when a tractor trailer hit the minibus he was on, causing a devastating multi-car crash that killed one of his friends and fellow comedian James McNair. Now Morgan narrowly avoided instant death but was taken to hospital with life-threatening brain injuries as well as shattered legs and ribs. His life was hanging on by a thread and he was put into a medically induced coma for a week. When he woke up, he could barely speak and was blind for 6 days. On his road to recovery, he said he often thought about suicide and that he was on a very dark path for a very long time. At the number 8 spot now, we have George Foreman. The businessman and former boxer once had a near-death experience after a boxing match in 1977. The fight was intense. It went 12 rounds, and when he returned to his dressing room, he collapsed from heat exhaustion. He heard a voice say, "You believe in God? Why are you afraid to die?" And then his life started to play before his eyes like a fast-forwarded videotape, and he said he knew his life was about to end. Then he cried out and tried to make a deal with God where he would live if he gave away his money to poor people. The voice said, "I don't want your money, I want you." He later described the place he was in as a dark void, a vacuum without love, light or happiness. Coming in at the number 7 spot now, we have Gary Busey. This famous Hollywood actor has had quite a few run-ins with death, but perhaps the worst was his motorcycle crash. In 1988, he was out riding his motorcycle without a helmet on when he went flying over his handlebars and smashed his head onto the curb. He split his skull wide open and created a huge hole. During emergency back surgery, he died on the operating table, and Gary said he went to the other side and saw balls of light just floating in the air. Now 3 of them apparently approached him and he realized that he himself had no gender anymore. He was not his former self. The light told him he had been doing good in his life and that he may go with them now or return to his body to continue his destiny. Now Gary chose to return and told everyone that what he saw were angels. The experience actually made him dedicate his whole life to Jesus. Moving on to number 6 now, we have Elizabeth Taylor. This famous British-American actress was once having back surgery in the late 1950s when she technically died on the operating table. As 11 medical staff tried to revive her, she saw a tunnel and a white light. In the tunnel, she saw her late husband Michael Todd. She said to him, "Oh Mike, you're where I want to be," and he said, "No baby, you have to turn around and go back because there is something very important for you to do. You cannot give up now." She said that it was only these words that brought her back from the brink of death. Next up at number 5 now, we have Ian McCormack. In 1982, he was diving for lobsters off the coast of the island of Mauritius when he was stung by 5-box jellyfish, one of the deadliest creatures in the world. With death only minutes away, he was already totally paralyzed when the ambulance arrived. On the way to the hospital, Ian said he saw his life flash before his eyes. He said he saw his mother praying for him and telling him to call out to God to forgive him. The doctors tried but failed to save him, and Ian lay dead for 15 minutes. During this time, he described being in a long dark tunnel where he could put his hand through his own face. Then a light appeared at the end of the tunnel that gave him an immense feeling of warmth and comfort, and a voice asked him if he wished to return to his body. He said yes, and the voice showed showed him a Bible passage that he had never heard of before. When he came back to life, he was an instant believer in Jesus because he went to check the Bible, and sure enough, it was a real passage. Moving on to number 4 now, we have the story of Colton, a 3-year-old boy who had a near-death experience in 2003. He was the son of a pastor who had emergency surgery and later said he entered heaven. He said he could see the doctors operating and his dad praying in the waiting room. He then began to describe events that he shouldn't possibly have known. He said he knew about his unborn sister that his mother had miscarried some years before. He also described details of his great-grandfather who died 24 years before Colton was even born. He even said he met Jesus, who was riding a rainbow-coloured horse, and that he sat on his lap as he sang to him. The story fascinated people and was eventually turned into a book that sold over 10 million copies, as well as a movie that earned over $100 million. Coming in at number 3 now, we have Anita Moorjani. In 2006, she was fighting a losing battle with cancer. She had dropped to just 85 pounds in weight with massive inoperable tumours on her skull and abdomen. She ended up dying from this and said at that point she crossed over into an afterlife. Suddenly, she had a sense of being able to see everything, and then she met her father who had died some years before. He told her that if she goes any further, she won't be able to turn back. Anita said she struggled to turn back because the place she was in was just so beautiful and there was no pain for the first time in years, only love. But she also had a moment of clarity where she knew that if she returned to her body, the cancer would heal. Sure enough, she came back to life and the tumours shrank by 70% within just 4 days. The doctors were shocked, but Anita said she knew it wasn't her time to die. Moving on to the number 2 spot now, we have a woman called Crystal McVeigh. During an operation in 2009, she died on the operating table. She said she experienced a trip to heaven that was beyond human words. However, she described God as an immense brightness. But here's the interesting thing, a brightness that she could feel, taste, touch, hear and smell. All of these senses and more totally consumed her. Crystal said she felt as if she had 500 senses, ones that she had no concept of here on Earth. She later said she was always a doubter when it came to God's existence, but when this happened, she never wanted to leave that place again. However, she said God sent her back to her body after freeing her from her shame and guilt. And finally, number 1, we have Ben Breedlove. In 2011, the 18-year-old from Texas posted a video to YouTube called This Is My Story. He held up index cards that told the story of his rare heart condition that once required surgery. He vividly recalled being in a white room that had no walls. The room just didn't end. He said he was there with his favourite rapper, Kid Cudi. They were both wearing white suits, and when he looked at himself in the mirror, he felt very proud of his entire life and that he didn't want to leave that place. Now the saddest part of all of this story is that a week after posting this video to YouTube, on Christmas Day 2011, Ben had a heart attack and died. The story spread all over the world and Kid Cudi said he broke down and cried when he heard it. Well guys, those were some pretty intense stories. They really make you think, don't they? Do any of you guys think this is proof of an afterlife? Or do you think this is just caused by chemicals and a dying brain? I'd be interested to hear if any of you guys know of any crazier ones that I missed out. Maybe we can make a part 2. Don't forget to subscribe. My name is Danny Burke and I'll see all of you guys in the next video.